Are you a forward thinker? Then you need an HR and finance platform that thinks like you do. Workday is the AI platform that helps propel your organization, your workforce, and your industry into the future. Workday, moving business forever forward.
Welcome back to Marvelous Disney, the podcast where Dan Graney and I talk about all things Marvel, from the movies to the TV shows, the theme parks, and occasionally the alternate timelines where things could have gone very, very differently. And by the way, I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the delightful Dan Graney. Happy New Year, by the way, Dan. Did you and the family do anything interesting in 2026?
Well, Happy New Year to you. And you know what? Not really. I will say that we did what I think a lot of people did was we watched the finale of Stranger Things. And then I, went back and watched social media just kind of light up with discussions and debates and diatribes. And, it was all very lively. And then continuing the lively discussion, I noticed that Marvel's first week of 2026, if this thing is any indication, because we're only just 4 days into it, this might be the year they just stop pretending that leaks are accidents.
You are probably correct. Yes, between the weekly Doomsday teasers, the Spider-Man footage floating around out there, and fans playing full-on detective, Marvel's marketing department has officially entered "we see nothing" mode.
Yeah, and I was thinking about this. This might actually be the plan because, at this point, every leak, it feels less like a bug and more like a feature because, just think about it. Like, we're talking about it now. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think someone deserves credit for reminding the lawyers that there's just this insane amount of free advertising that's happening right now across the entire fanosphere.
Excellent point. But before we get to trailers, leaks, and Marvel's potentially very intentional chaos, I want to take a moment here to acknowledge our sponsor, which of course is unlockmagic.com, where you can then get real discounts on Walt Disney World and Universal Orlando tickets, sometimes upwards of 12% off. And just so you know, Unlock Magic is run by the exact same team behind the DVC rental store and the DVC resale market. And if you are planning a trip to Central Florida in 2026, just pick your dates, grab your tickets, and go. Unlock Magic makes it that easy to rack up some pretty significant savings. Oh, and when you get your tickets, please tell the nice folks at unlockmagic.com that it was Dan and Jim who sent you there. Okay, so now pivoting back, and again, folks, as Dan mentioned at the very top of today's show, this is our first show for 2026, and because I'm old, New Year's makes me somewhat melancholy. You start to think about the passage of time, and again, the interesting thing is a year seems like this immense chunk of time, but you get to be my age, and it goes by in a blip. And that coupled with the fact that, realistically, there were people this past year who did not get to finish things, for a variety of reasons. And that's, sometimes it's just tough to talk about people who, didn't get the chance to finish what they started.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of a reminder when we look at all of this and we look at the immensity of everything and the largeness and the bigness. We talk about all of this stuff and we talk about franchises. But honestly, no matter how big a franchise gets, it's all built on people. And people don't always get neat, wrapped up endings.
And forgive me, folks, because this is going to be a weird left turn for a Marvel news podcast, but I want to talk about John Banner, who now some of you will recognize that name because this is the character actor who played Sergeant Schultz on Hogan's Heroes. He was the guard, at Stalag 13 who knew nothing, but here's the thing, that there's more to this guy's story. Banner was actually born Johann Banner in 1910 to Jewish parents in what's now the Ukraine. And he trained to be an actor, immigrated to the United States, and then in kind of one of history's more cruel ironies, he found himself typecast in Hollywood. He had to play German soldiers and Gestapo officers, where, in fact, in real life, Banner, once he got to the States, he actually enlisted in the Army Air Force. In fact, in that arm of the service, he served as a supply officer. In fact, and this is the thing, you look at that roly-poly guy that you see from the sitcom in the 60s, but he was initially a very fit guy, and in fact, the Army used his image in a recruiting poster.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so that was what, 40s? It was 65,
Yep.
and that's when he got on Hogan's Heroes. And I think that was 6 seasons. It was always it was like a top 20 show on CBS.
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And yeah, I mean, it was on longer in the US than we were involved in World War II.
Yeah. Okay. And yes, I know today from 2025, looking back at 1965 and Hogan's Heroes, a lot of people, like that sitcom. But back then, again, it was beloved. And I mean, for example, Warner Kent Klempler, the gentleman who played Colonel Klink, actually took home 2 Emmys from that show. He was honored for his work as best supporting actor in a comedy, and Banner himself became this beloved household name. I mean, again, if you were out in the world and you were in a situation where maybe I should have plausible deniability, you literally quoted, Sergeant Schultz, "I know nothing," which makes what happens next kind of heartbreaking. Hogan's Heroes ends its run on CBS in May of 1971. But the interesting thing is, Banner was so beloved. And Dan, can you explain what a Q rating is?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Q rating is general. I mean, honestly, in the simplest terms, it's like an awareness rating. If you were to measure like 100 people, the Q rating is how many people out of that 100 would say, "Oh yeah, that guy," and it could be, and it's for characters, it's for properties, it could be for animated characters. Q rating, and it's a figure that's used a lot. And still used.
Now, I want to say, when it was explained to me initially, when they said Q rating, it was literally, the key word was quotient, as in likability quotient. And the interesting thing is, like, William Shatner has this Q quotient that's off the charts. That's why William Shatner always got cast in new pilots. On the heels of Star Trek, Shatner, there hasn't been a day that Shatner hasn't worked.
He's Priceline, he's TJ Hooker. I mean,
there we go. Yeah. There we go. Whereas John Banner, because again, Sergeant Schultz was his beloved character, he had like a William Shatner level likability quotient. So they had just canceled Hogan's Heroes on CBS when CBS turned around and said, "Hey, John, would you like to be in a new series for us?" And he literally shot a pilot for a show that debuted in September of 71 called The Chicago Teddy Bears. And what was interesting about it, it was kind of a Hogan's Heroes-like premise in that this one, again, was a period sitcom set in a period comedy. It was set in Chicago in the 1920s, and they had John starring with Disney favorite Dean Jones. They ran a speakeasy in the city and tried to not upset the police or the mob. But anyway, Chicago Teddy Bears doesn't run. It only runs 13 episodes, but John, again, has this amazing likability quotient. he guest stars on like Alias Smith and Jones and the Partridge Family. I mean, he's working, right?
Yeah. Am I misremembering? Did he appear on Laugh-In?
Had to.
Yeah. I just feel like I have this memory of him being on Laugh-In. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, but Nixon on down appeared on Laugh-In. So if you were in pop culture at that point, you made an appearance on Laugh-In. But anyway, John decided in 1973, in fact, just after the holidays started, that he wanted to make a return to the old world. So he booked a plane trip and he flew over to Vienna. But what was interesting about this trip is that because, well, you got to remember that a lot of John's relatives were Jewish. And sadly, a bunch of them had died in the concentration camps, during World War II. And John was actually going over there as part of this trip to sort of pay homage, wander around, visit some of these places. And sadly, January 28th, in fact, it was his 63rd birthday, he had an aortic aneurysm and died. And again, he's over there to pay tribute to his relatives. But again, he's got a hard out because he needs to be back in LA for February for pilot season because he's got like 3 different scripts that they've already offered him for new shows. So
that was a guy who was set for life. He had a career that just had so much momentum and so many stories that were just, left to be told and left to be seen. And it all just stopped.
Yeah, and again, folks, I apologize. I know I don't bring this up to start the show on a down note, or but this is what happens in show business, even today, and even in some of the biggest franchises on the planet.
Considering that just recently we saw Chadwick Boseman in the news.
Oh, yeah. That Ryan Coogler, who, let's remember, it's award season, and Sinners is definitely in the mix. So writer-director Ryan Coogler is out there, talking about his most recent project. But as he's been out there doing interviews, questions came up about the original plan for Black Panther 2. And Dan, had you heard this story before? Because it would have been a great film, don't you think?
Yeah, I did. I did hear this. Because there was a lot going on in this, and this is the movie they wanted to make. And yeah, when you hear about it, you're like, oh, yeah, that would have been something.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story because what Coogler came up with, the conceit was that T'Challa and his now 8-year-old son are doing, what is it called? The Ritual of 8, where I want to say the conceit is that the king and his son head out, away from the city into the bush for 8 days. And, well, it not only have to survive by their own wits, but they all, during this time, the son can ask their dad anything, and he has to answer that question, which sounds dangerous in and of itself.
Oh, God. Yeah. But I think this is when, during this ritual, during this time, when they're on their own, is when Namor would attack. So T'Challa is fighting an insanely dangerous threat. But cannot lead he can't leave his 8-year-old son's side. So, I mean, this was a movie about fathers and sons and kings and heroes and all of it all at once.
It just, again, the premise just sounds amazing. So Coogler finishes the script, 180 pages, send it to Chadwick, and sadly, Boseman at this point is just too sick to read it, right?
Yeah. And they just like circling back to John Banner, this next chapter just stops cold and becomes this thing that just doesn't happen. It never exists.
but here's the thing, folks. Again, the entertainment industry, it never stops, and Marvel, as part of the entertainment industry, never stops. And again, Ryan Coogler never stops either. You know, he moved on. He makes Sinners. He keeps creating because that's what you do.
And you know what? That's kind of like the quiet theme of this episode because, while some doors are closing too early and some never open, but then others get reopened when you least expect it.
Yeah, which is how Marvel is now handling legacy, returns, and what might have been. It all seems very intentional, don't you think, Dan?
Oh yes. I think we're going to find this out.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, we'll discuss this further in a moment. But first, this. And we're back. Okay, Dan. So let's now start with the big picture. We because if you remember from last week's show, folks, we were speculating on these teaser trailers for Avengers Doomsday that were popping up in various places and what was legit, what was not. But now we've had a couple of weeks of theater-only clips and not to mention shaky cam descriptions. And in fact, what was so funny is as we were getting started here tonight, I saw a news story come across my feed about people complaining about I can't tell the Marvel trailers, the real ones from the fakes right now. And so again, it's not like the way Marvel is handling this rollout is actually clarifying things. If anything, it's kind of multiplying the confusion.
You know what? This is all about multiple Earths. So, instead of one clean trailer, we've got multiple character-centric trailers or teasers, really. We had the first one, Captain America, and then, that came out legitimately. Then we had Thor, and that came out legitimately. And now we're seeing reports that suggesting that as many as 6 total are planned because every time one gets rated overseas via the Korean film panel, because that's how people are finding, the film panel over there, they basically say this has been rated or it's ready to go. So people are digging into these records and the internet lights up and we see, okay, well, there we go. Now we're looking at possibly 6.
But by a startling coincidence, the 6 trailers all seem to, initially find their way in front of Avatar, Fire and Ash, especially when it's being screened in IMAX, which I'm sure is entirely coincidental.
Absolutely. Although at this point, with Steve Rogers being back with a family, with a child, that's not the headline anymore.
No. What's changed since last week is Steve Rogers is now no longer feels like the exception, right?
No. Like I said, we just saw last week or this week earlier the Thor focused Doomsday teaser, which we had talked about.
If I might interrupt here for a moment, I have to ask: when you first saw that, and it was mostly set in a forest, tell me initially you were like, "This is the real one." Really?
It's really, really interesting the approach they're taking because they're so short. I mean, they're just barely over a minute. But, so I think at first the general reaction was, I mean, they came out they came out smart. They said, okay, Steve Rogers, that's going to make people happy, even if it is only a minute.
Yep.
And then Thor, but we see Thor in a very somber way that harkens more back to the Kenneth Branagh Thor versus the Taika Waititi Love and Thunder Thor.
Goofy Thor.
Yeah, we got away.
Go ahead, say it.
And they got away from that again. So that's like they're doing two things, which is one, they're like, okay, Thor's back. Oh, he's back, and he's not a joke.
And more to the point that the entire or a good portion of the trailer is long shots of like Thor, down on one knee and appealing to his father, and it's just one of these things where again I was looking at it, it's like, somebody really worked the AI on this one, it's just like and then to find out later, no, this is legit. This is the one.
Absolutely, absolutely, is the real one, and it's good to be. There is a lot of stuff to be suspect out there, or suspicious of, because AI is coming up with some pretty impressive solutions.
Now, speaking of which, though, and again, we've now supposedly had hints of trailer number 3, which again, just to sort of lean into the AI-ness of this all, is supposedly loaded with all sorts of classic imagery, right? But from a different film franchise.
Oh, yes. And it came up, it appeared last week almost right away, almost instantaneously. It was like Saturday night, all of a sudden there's all this footage of, what looks like an X-Men trailer that is clearly leaning into a not the X-Men Fox look, although it is the Fox X-Men actors, but
the cast,
cast, but clearly the animated and also 90s comic book looks.
Yeah. I mean, people have been making a very big deal of what is it? James Marsden returns as Cyclops, but again, he's now in a comic accurate suit from the 90s, right?
Oh yeah.
Whereas Patrick Stewart and Magneto.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're in this as well, and again, there's always the Zapruder film aspect of this, folks. So there are people examining the trailer, and that's a Sentinel's leg in the background there.
Well, see, and there you go. Now on Tuesday, which will be Tuesday morning, when this, so this, by the time people hear this. This trailer is already going to be wide, and everybody will pick it apart again, but now in 4K or HD quality. But this is telling us something important, and it's that Marvel's not just reopening one perfect ending, because we talked about the perfect endings of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, but they're really deliberately kind of reactivating entire legacy eras.
All right, so if this is true, and again, you've picked up on this pattern. So again, Steve and Thor and the X-Men, this now stops being about nostalgia, and so this is a story strategy. Is that what you think?
I think it's a strategy built around the concept of memory, like who remembers what, which versions matter, which histories are about to collide. And it's fascinating is that while Marvel's, kind of going bigger in the theaters.
I know where you're going with this. It seems like on the TV side of things, they seem to be wrapping stuff up.
Yes. Yeah. Shows that, might be good, but really kind of no longer fit this larger plan. Speaking of, what's up with Wonder Man? We got a new trailer.
But here's the thing. Over on Disney Plus, first of all, it's one of those things where it's like, this does not bode well. Marvel has decided, instead of, every week getting a new episode of Wonder Man, we're getting all 8 episodes dropped at once.
Yeah, that is not something Disney does often, but it does put Wonder Man in the same bucket as Echo, which is, you think about it, back to that, it was a show that critics and fans respond to, those who watched it, but they no longer really fit their evolving TV strategy, and they are kind of become Marvel Studio orphans.
Now, important thing to stress here, not bad projects, but just projects from a previous era at Marvel Studio, a road that Kevin Feige and company, for some reason, have no longer decided that they want to go down, kind of like Kang.
Well, see,
So-
and that's kind of like the through line of this episode. On one hand, we've got Marvel with their deliberate closing of the door on certain things, shows like Wonder Man that don't fit where they're headed right now.
But at the exact same time, to be reopening doors that, again, we thought were sealed forever. I mean, Steve Rogers goes off and has his happy ending. Thor gets to be a dad. The X-Men, which, I mean, just Logan, just how that, well, I guess we should have been ready for this given what happened with Deadpool and Wolverine. But yeah, I mean, I guess before we jump into today's feature, I do want to take a quick detour into Marvel history because Mark Evanier over on his News From Me website posted something earlier this week that kind of stuck with me. It made me smile, and the piece that Mark posted was called "For Fans of Jack Kirby," and not a think piece, not an argument. It was just something quiet and meaningful, right?
Oh yeah, Evanier, he talked about how New York City's officially approved, this co-naming a block on the Lower East Side, Essex Street, which is between Delancey and Rivington, as Jack Kirby Way, and that's where he was born. That's his home.
Yeah, and Evanier made this great point in his blog post that Jack Kirby, over his life, he received awards and plaques and accolades and industry recognition. But this one, this would have meant the most to him, not a corporate honor, not a branded tribute. This is the city that he grew up in, saying, one of ours matters.
Yeah. I mean, before Jack Kirby was just like a machine of IP, he, before he was Marvel's real visual engine, and before the Kirby crackle became this entire artistic language that still influences artists today, he was a kid from the Lower East Side.
And the beauty part of the story, and you have to go check it out again on News From Me, folks, is Evanier even maps it out. He shows exactly where the sign will go, because as Mark points out, Cat's Delicatessen is what? Just around the corner, right?
Oh, I mean, that's perfect, because, people could go and then pay respects and then eat, honestly, what I think is the biggest pastrami sandwich in New York, which he notes Kirby's favorite deli food wasn't actually pastrami. It was potato latkes, but still, that's the place.
There we go. And more to the point, I love learning that Jack's favorite food was potato latkes. So, but again, grounded, human, real, not flashy.
Yeah. Well, and this kind of ties into something we're kind of been circling around all episode, is this the idea that Marvel is in this moment where it's deciding what parts of its past it wants to spotlight, and maybe what parts quietly just sort of fade away.
And Kirby's story is a reminder that timing matters, that some creators are ahead of their era. Some ideas are too big for the business that surrounds them. And sometimes recognition doesn't come from an industry at all, but it comes from a community.
Yeah, which, this would be a perfect moment to kind of talk about something we've been talking about offline, which is one of the biggest doors Marvel almost opened, but then never did.
But we'll get to that in a moment. But first, this.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just
speaking into the void?
But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. Okay, folks. For the feature this week, Dan and I are going to talk about one of my personal favorite what ifs that before Sam Raimi, before the MCU, before Spider-Man was a brand in and unto himself, there was a moment where a filmmaker maybe you heard of, got a teeny tiny movie out in theaters right now, Avatar, Fire and Ash, by the way, just blew through the $1 billion level, making him, what is it, a 4-time $1 billion earning filmmaker? Yeah. Okay. But here's the thing, and this was this before Terminator, or it had to be at least before Terminator Judgment Day that he wanted to make a Spider-Man movie, right?
I believe it was before Judgment Day.
Okay.
But it wasn't before some other movie that he made instead. But I mean, we're talking about James Cameron. And, this is something where he wrote a script and then he wrote what they called a script mint. So, I mean, he was all in. He was serious about this.
Oh, and by the way, you can find this online, folks, if you want to see what a James Cameron Spider-Man movie would have been like. And I'm just going to tell you right up front before you start reading the script, more adult, more aggressive, more biological, and certainly less quippy, right?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard this reference to as James Cameron's R-rated Spider-Man. I don't know, but I mean, it does deal. We have Peter Parker as a teenager dealing with power as puberty. It had villains like Electro and Sandman, but reimagined through kind of a body horror lens. It really wasn't like a Marvel movie as we know them today. This was a Cameron movie, but with Marvel DNA in it.
Very much so. And the interesting thing about this story, folks, is James Cameron's version of Spider-Man. Well, it didn't happen, obviously, but it didn't happen for anything related to creativity. It died a dog's death because, it was a legal nightmare, right? There were, 7 different companies, overlapping rights. There were lawsuits. There were bankruptcies.
Yeah, that period in the 70s, the late 60s, early 70s, the mid 70s, when Marvel was just signing things away left and right. And it became this legal quagmire. And Cameron, he just kind of, he was like, he walked away and he made, Titanic. So it kind of worked out for everybody involved.
But again, what's fascinating about this particular road not taken is that it still echoes today, because if you look at Spider-Man now as a franchise, it keeps reinventing itself, and that's largely because the individual filmmakers who step into the space all see wildly different things when they look at Peter Parker, right?
Oh, gotcha. I mean, let's think about this. So he's a street level hero, but then he's a mythic symbol, and he's a teenage everyman. But then there's this horror transformation story. But then look, he was on the Electric Company, but then he's also at Universal. He's also at Disney. I mean, he could be all of it. He could be everywhere.
But what's fascinating for me, though, is if we take a look at the last Spider-Man project, if we take a look at No Way Home, and again, I'm sorry, I'm spoiling it for the 5 of you who, for some reason, have not yet seen this movie, but portals open from the other world, and we get different Spider-Men stepping in. We get
Maguire.
Yeah, the Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland. All right. And what was lovely about the last third of that movie is that these 3 gentlemen from 3 very different takes on Spider-Man come together, and they work as this lovely unit, as this weird little family. And they're all fun Spider-Men in their own ways, and they're all little different quirks. And I guess that's the thing. There's just a part of me that I would love to see what James Cameron's take on Peter Parker would have been. That and whether or not he would have fit in with this jolly troop.
You know what a fun Easter egg would have been is if they would have just brought his version of Spider-Man just as a maybe cameo in the last Spider-Verse movie.
Oh, I like that. All right, and there's still an opportunity because it hasn't come out yet. That there's still one more to come.
Number three.
Ooh,
so
okay,
there you go.
All right, well. And again, so this is why Spider-Man survives every reboot, every reset, every industry shift. He's adaptable by design. So anyway, folks, on that note, I feel like that does it for this week's episode of Marvelous Disney, the first one of 2026. And Dan, again, one of the reasons we did the John Banner story, on today's show is that, folks, if you're paying attention to the hubbubbery, Dan and Hunter do wonderful look back at the career of character actors, particularly from the 70s and 80s. That's some of the stuff I love that you do. But can you tell nice folks how to come find your YouTube channel?
Yeah, the easiest way is just look up the hubbubbery. It's HUBBUBBERY on YouTube, Facebook, X. You can find us at all those places. Instagram, although the main course is definitely on YouTube. And yeah, you're right. We're big fans of celebrating the people who, that they would be called, that lady or that guy, people you recognize.
Yes.
And you can't quite place them, but then when you see them, you're like, oh yeah. And John Banner was definitely one of that guys.
That's it exactly. In fact, what's so funny is I want to say there's actually a film in the early 1960s prior to Hogan's Heroes where John Banner and Werner Kempler actually appear in a scene together, and it's just one of those things where you damn near break your neck, from like. Sergeant Charlton, Captain Colonel Clinker together. What are they doing on a uniform? All right. Anyway, enough with the pop culture cred. By the way, though, speaking of pop culture, if you enjoy all aspects of pop culture, we do that here at Jim Hill Media. We got Disney Dish, I do with Len Testa. That's our theme park news show. I got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. That's our animation news podcast. Likewise, we have the Epic Universal podcast that looks at the Universal parks. I do that with Eric Hersey. We also got I Want That Too. That's our Disney merch podcast. I do with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. And we've just recently added The Case 4 with Chris Cox, which is a comedy podcast that Len and I do with Mind Reader, Chris Cox. And then, of course, want to talk about the show that we host at Jim Hill Media. That is Manufacturing the Magic. That's our theme park history podcast, and that's done by Noah and Shelley Vio de Lead, which is not to be confused with our Patreon project, Disney Unpacked. We do that with veteran Imagineer Jim Schul. And when I say we, that's me and Mr. Tess as well. And in fact, the episode we have coming up this month, we're going to use Pooh's Honey Hunt, the attraction at Tokyo Disneyland, as an excuse to pay tribute to the late, great Imagineer and beloved themed entertainment professional Eddie Sato. But for now, we're going to close up shop this week. Before we do, though, want to thank Eric Hersey and David Gray for the great job they do with the editing and production of this podcast. Also, have a favor. If you folks could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review Marvelous Disney. We're only 8 episodes in at this point, and it still needs some help with people finding the show. And speaking of finding, Dan, where can the nice people find you on social media?
Look for me, either Dan Graney 67 on Facebook, or you can find me at the Hububbery, HUBBUBBERY on Facebook. That'd be the easiest way.
Cool. And as for me, you can find me on X and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and then over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And that is going to do it for this week, folks. So on behalf of Mr. Graney, want to thank you for listening to this installment of Marvelous Disney. And we will be back to discuss the next 35 trailers on an upcoming episode. But till then, take care.